Good evening. So, recap, you guys learned about the beginnings of Rome, how it started with the Latins and the Etruscans, with a monarchy, which is eventually overthrown in 509 BC. 509 BC, remember, is the date that marked the beginning of the Roman Republic. A republic being when all social classes are represented in government. With that being said, you had the two main groups of patricians and the plebeians. Patricians were the land-holding upper class and the overwhelming minority in terms of population. And then you had the plebeians, who are your lower class, or your merchants, artisans, and peasants. While they virtually have no power, they are greatest in number. We also went into the Punic Wars. The three main wars fought between Rome and Carthage over control for the Mediterranean Sea, which was vital to both economies. There were three wars, Rome winning all of them. As a result of expansion, plebeian soldiers who were promised riches if they fought in the wars returned home to find their land destroyed or even in some cases gone, being stolen essentially by the patrician landholding upper class, as if they needed more land. But remember, land is good because land equals money, and money equals, hopefully you got it right. When they got home, not only did they not have land, they couldn't find any jobs. Men off are at war, the rich are going to end up buying slaves, which were war captives, and they have them work the jobs that would have previously been available to the plebeians. Why would you pay someone to do the job when you had the labor there free? Slaves, as a result of the Punic Wars and the other methods of expansion, made up for 1/3 of the entire population of Rome, 33%, putting the plebeians to about 50 to 60%. So if you think about that, 50 to 60% being plebeian and 33% being slave, the patrician class is extremely small. Grain will end up becoming cheap because they're going to be bringing it in from the conquered territories instead of having to trade. This allowed for the poor to have affordable food, but it also had a negative effect because it took those jobs away from people who would have previously worked in the mills. And as a result, we are going to have a widening socioeconomic gap as the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. As a result, the poor are going to look for change. You have the tribunes, remember, that are going to fight for the poor or the plebeian class. Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, two brothers who really fought for rights of the plebeians. Due to their efforts of fighting for the plebeians, they end up getting assassinated by members of the Senate. Why did they want change? Because they didn't have any jobs. The majority of Romans were either unemployed or they were slaves. And without having the jobs, they don't have the money or the means to food, whether it was raising their own or purchasing. So they are going to end up rebelling and rising up against the government. You're also going to see a change in a soldier's attitude. Prior to this, people fought for their city, their empire. Now they are going to fight for their general. There is no loyalty to the city, the state, or the empire. Generals will then end up competing against one another and almost headhunt for the best soldiers. So if I was a general and I saw that Armani had this really awesome general, I would go and offer him more money than she did. And naturally, he's going to come to me because people want money, because money equals power. This whole circumstance is something called booty. So booty does not always have to do with a booty. We get the first triumvirate. A triumvirate is three people who work together for the efficiencies of the government. Our first triumvirate has Julius Caesar, Crassus, and Pompey. A way to remember this is J, C, penny. Now, Pompey was in charge of politics. Crassus dealt with the economics, and Caesar dealt with the military. Even though economics is important or essential for all civilizations, the most important aspects are the politics and the military, leaving Pompey and Caesar to be the ones that are the most important. Caesar's mission was to go and conquer Gaul. Gaul is modern-day France. Alright, so 3 starts making to be quite a bit of a crowd there. Things are getting heated between them. Caesar, in conquering Gaul and other parts of Europe, was quite successful, to the point of where he was becoming very popular. This made Pompey, or some people call him Pompey, a little nervous. He tells Caesar that he must come home. He must come home. He must disband his army. Caesar's like, I don't think so, buddy. I am way more powerful than you. I am stronger, and I will destroy you. Caesar then does the unthinkable to Pompey and crosses the Rubicon River. Upon crossing the Rubicon River, a civil war occurs between Pompey and Julius Caesar. Caesar is victorious, and then has the Senate declare him dictator for life. Remember, a dictator can only be elected during times of war. So he is challenging the whole concept that the Republic is based on. Very famous quote by him that you must know. After he becomes dictator, he says, "Veni vidi vici." It's spelled "veni vidi vici." Either one, I don't care. But you must know that he said those 3 words. What do they mean? I came. I saw. I conquered. Now, even though he was a dictator, he did a lot of good things. He had a public works system. The public works employed jobs. He takes the land away from the rich and he gives it to the poor, making him kind of like an ancient Robin Hood. He is also going to make it easier for conquered peoples to become citizens. And he develops the Julian calendar. He added the month July to the calendar in honor of himself. He didn't really add it, actually, he named it for himself. The months were basically laid out already. The Julian calendar is very similar to the one we use today, which is the Gregorian calendar. Beware the Ides. Caesar's wife foresees trouble brewing. She begs her husband to please not go to work on the 15th of March. Something bad is going to happen. Caesar wrote her off like it's not a big deal. Perhaps he felt this way because Caesar, in the meantime, is messing around with Cleopatra of Egypt. She's a Greek. Romans loved all things Greek. And he was having an affair with her. So he just saw it as maybe like a little bit of jealousy type of thing. But he then sees a soothsayer, kind of like a fortune teller, who tells Caesar to beware the Ides of March. Ides means middle. So we're talking the middle of March, we're talking about March 15th. Some of the senators are upset with how powerful Julius Caesar has become, including his best friend, Brutus. Even though Caesar was warned about the Ides of March by his wife, having this weird gut feeling, and by this fortune teller, he goes anyways. He's Julius Caesar. He's invincible. Upon Arriving at work, the men are socializing together, they're all wearing their long white robes, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they all bust out these knives and they start stabbing him, including his best friend. He is stabbed to death. He's stabbed, they say, anywhere between 70 and 120 times. Why the discrepancy? Because they believe that some wounds were repetitive over the same spot and they could not really determine the number of times. As he lays there dying, he looks up at his best friend, Brutus, and says, "Et tu, Brute?" Like, you too, Brutus? How could you do this to me? You're supposed to be my best friend, and you just stabbed me in the back. Which is where the modern day phrase stabbed in the back comes from. Justice must be served, which is why they form the Second Triumvirate. The Second Triumvirate is formed after Julius Caesar's funeral, at which Brutus spoke and explained why he killed his best friend. Mark Antony is just ticked. He's like, I ain't having any of this. We're going to figure out who all is responsible, and we will make them pay. So he gets with Octavian Caesar, who is the grandnephew of Julius Caesar, and Lepidus. The way to remember the Second Triumvirate is A, O, L. The purpose of the triumvirate, again, was to punish those responsible. Lepidus is kind of just cast aside. He's not really that important. But Octavian and Mark Antony will fight one another. Antony picks up where Julius Caesar left off and hooks up with Cleopatra, who already had 2 children by Julius Caesar. If you look at it, Cleopatra has now slept with 2 major Roman leaders. That would hopefully indicate to you that she had a little bit of an agenda up her sleeve. So, Antony flees to Egypt to get help from Cleopatra and her army. Octavian follows him. There is a naval battle, the Battle of Actium. During this battle, Mark Antony starts losing. Cleopatra, devastated, leaves. She's watching it in the distance. She and her boat leave. When Antony sees that Cleopatra left, he was totally destroyed. He and his men sail back to the shore, where he puts his sword in the sand upright, and it is said that he falls upon his sword, stabbing himself. People ask, how did he stab himself? You put the pointy side up. Cleopatra also commits suicide by snake bite. Right, so now we have Octavian Caesar. He is the grandnephew of Julius Caesar. He takes over in 31 BC. He, however, did not want to be a dictator like Julius Caesar. He did not agree with that. He termed himself the first citizen of Rome instead, so that he was someone for people to look up to. With his new rule came a new name. The Roman Senate gave him the name Augustus. Augustus means exalted one, so that he is the highest of society. From this point, the Republic will turn into an empire, meaning the Roman Republic lasted from 509 BC to 31 BC. And with the rule of Augustus Caesar comes some peace, and it is called the Pax Romana.